My problems? Well, they start a little earlier than most people's. For starters, dressing up for me isn't just about fashion, it's strategy. Each day, I have to figure out what's appropriate for the weather and hides my sweat stains best. Black shirts are pretty good for the summer, but white shirts, well, they show my sweat stains. I love the winter though, because I can always layer up and hide my stains, even when I wear white, or I can wear something super thick and cover it up fully. But life and my hyperhidrosis can unexpectedly change throughout the day. So I always have to make sure to stay prepared by packing cologne, deodorant, and extra clothes, especially if my sweating gets super bad or if the weather changes. But on super unexpected days where I'm unprepared, things can quickly take a turn for the worst and get embarrassing. Like I said, I'm usually prepared for these kind of situations, but when they do happen, they definitely accelerate my social anxiety and make me reluctant to participate in class. Similarly, fitness can sometimes be more about fitting in. I'm an avid basketball player, but with my hyperhidrosis, my shirts get so sweaty that sometimes I get ridiculed. This also accelerates my social anxiety and makes me reluctant to participate in my favorite sport. Also, hyperhidrosis changes some of the simplest things into the most difficult. For example, writing can be a nightmare with all the smudges that the moisture on my hand causes. The moisture affects the responsiveness of my devices too. One time, all the buttons started clicking on my iPad and I almost messaged someone by mistake. Similarly, when I'm typing and especially when I'm stressed trying to finish my assignments, my keyboard gets super wet and musty. And things get really bad when the moisture starts building up on my trackpad, because then my mouse stops working. And in fact, this happened one time at 11:58. I had to submit an assignment at 11:59, and I almost wasn't able to because my mouse wasn't clicking and pointing at the right buttons. Don't worry, I got it done on time though. Some other embarrassing struggles include leaving damp spots on the pages of books, leaving wet handprints on tables, and the most embarrassing one, leaving moisture marks on my seat. Moving on to more social problems, when I'm done with the gaming controller or TV remote or any other item and I have to give it to someone else, things can get really embarrassing considering how much moisture I leave on the item. I usually have to wipe it down, and even then, the other person feels super grossed and hesitant to touch it. My close friends know about my hyperhidrosis, so they only give me fist bumps. But when people that don't know about me come to offer a handshake or dap up, things can get super awkward. Either I have to avoid contact their hand, which is weird on its own, or I have to quickly wipe my hand and then dap them up. But even then, touching my clammy hands can be gross for the other person, and especially gross when my sweat transfers onto their hand. At least during COVID, I had an excuse with all the social distancing and no contact rules. And let's just say, at interviews, my first impressions aren't always the driest. My feet have a whole nother story with hyperhidrosis. Because of how much my feet sweat, my socks quickly get moist and smelly, and so I have to go through so many different pairs of socks each week. And this, as you can see, quickly builds up in my laundry. In times where I didn't have any leftover pairs of socks and had to reuse a pair, or when I didn't dry my feet throughout the day, the trapped moisture in the sock has led to recurrent cases of athlete's foot, which is a fungal infection that thrives in these damp conditions. And although athlete's foot isn't harmful, it's definitely annoying, given the itchiness and appearance that comes along with it. At home, I often don't wear a sock, which lets the moisture air out and not be trapped under something. However, I usually feel very slippery when I'm walking at home, not because the floor is wet, but because my feet are wet. And since I wear sandals without socks, over time all of my sandals develop this sort of discoloration, especially at the toes and heel. It's safe to say that hyperhidrosis challenges me every single day in different ways. But it's become a part of me. Although I don't have control over my sweat, I'm learning to control its impact on my life and not let it stop me. Whether this is by keeping a towel on deck to wipe my keyboard, phone, and anything else that gets super wet from my hands, keeping extra clothes, socks, and deodorant on deck, dressing in a way that fits the weather and hides my armpit sweat stains, getting my friends and family to adapt their behaviors, like fist bumping me, and by spreading awareness about the condition to my friends and family, like by explaining to them that it's not something I can control, it's just sweat, I'm not sick, and no, it's not contagious. So, these are some of the ways that hyperhidrosis has affected or changed my daily life. Receiving the scholarship would not only alleviate my physical sweating through the Dermadry kit, but would also help ease the stress I'm facing from my current financial situation. Your support would make a world of a difference.